Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to FICCI Cascade X Space. And today we'll be talking about addressing smuggling and counterfeiting in the era of trade facilitation. And today we are going to be in conversation with a leader who has been at the very heart of India's tax and trade ecosystem. Mr. Sanjay Kumar Agarwal, former chairman of the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, brings with him decades of experience in shaping customs administration, driving GST implementation, and strengthening enforcement across the country. His remarkable journey offers a rare insider's perspective on how India managed trade, taxation, and compliance at scale. Sir, thank you so much for joining us today, and we welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Rao.
So we look forward to an engaging discussion today on this extremely important topic of addressing smuggling and counterfeiting in the era of trade facilitation. And I would like to start with my first question, sir. As India pursues faster trade facilitation and simplified compliances, how can enforcement systems remain equally responsive to the risk posed by smuggling and counterfeiting?
A very good evening to everyone. I am glad that I have been given an opportunity to address the gathering and put light on the pathways adopted by the Government of India to handle the menace of smuggling and counterfeiting. Let me begin with some statistics of the volumes handled by the customs to give a perspective of task in hand for customs. Everyday customs on an average processes something like 50,000 entries of cargo entering at various ports and airports in the country per day. Apart from this cargo, 1,25,000 entries of shipment coming by courier mode are also handled by customs. Imagine if the facilitation to a very large extent is not provided by customs, the ports and airports of the country would be choked and the cost to the businesses would amount drastically. Therefore, the customs has developed and deployed an automated system which rely heavily upon the large data repositories and use latest artificial intelligence and machine learning tools to select only the suspect consignments for scrutiny and physical checking. The percentage of selection is relatively kept small so as not to hinder the free flow of cargo in the country, but at the same time sufficient to keep effective checks on attempt to smuggle illicit and counterfeit cargo. With the advanced scanning systems installed by customs for scanning full 40-foot containers on move at all the major ports, the customs has further improved in striking a right balance between trade facilitation and enforcement.
So thank you so much for giving an overview of the processes and systems that we have. I would like to know, within the legitimate trade and supply chain systems that we have, so which are the most vulnerable, areas to misuse by illicit operators?
Okay, so let us understand it by economics. The illicit operator look for huge margins and accordingly target the commodities. Therefore, the commodities which have demand in the country, but the government has placed restrictions on their import or subject them to high import duties, be it to provide protection to domestic industry or to curb the consumption, are most prone to smuggling. Let me give you an example. Areca nut, which is also known as supari in common parlance, is an agriculture produce. To provide protection to farmers of areca nut in the country, the duty on its import is kept quite high, to the tune of 100%. Therefore, if illicit operators import areca nut by way of concealment in declared cargo or indulge in outright smuggling, they earn huge profits. Similar in the case of import of a banned refrigerant, use of as hazardous to the market. I can give you numerous examples. Here I would like to point out that in way of either land borders, by way of concealment which enter into the country, or by municipal. These are the three broad areas through which the illicit imports take place in the country. And as you have rightly pointed out, the commodities which are either restricted for import or subject to very high import duties are most prone for smuggling.
Sir, in this scenario, how important is intelligence-led targeting in intercepting counterfeit and smuggled goods without creating friction, for legitimate trade flows?
As I responded in my reply to first question, that India, being a huge economy, has very large volumes of imports. It is not possible to examine everything without impacting the free flow of legitimate cargo. Therefore, customs have deployed an automated system to do the risk analysis and select those which, on the basis of data gathered by customs from the filings data, are marked risky and subjected to detailed scrutiny and examination. But we must not forget that the human intelligence which the customs receive from one agency. In fact, before adopting a automated system of targeted intervention was non-existent, and tapping on human intelligence gathered from farmers or stakeholders. I like to intelligence part important. The illicit gold market. It's a become the red flags, which cannot go unnoticed as take. These reds are proof of human intelligence, and it is by customs law enforcement. It is important that intelligence is developed not only by analyzing the data, which is anyway being, but also gathered by human resources.
Business, as our eminent guest was giving an overview of the challenges that are there, in addressing smuggling, counterfeiting. Today, we'll be continuing this conversation now.
Yeah, yeah, Mr. Roy, I think the connection was lost for some time.
Yes, sir. Now
So,
we can hear you clearly, sir. Your
so
voice is clear now.
okay, so I was responding to your question that how important is intelligence-led targeting in intercepting counterfeit and
Yes,
smuggled
sir.
goods.
Yes, sir.
Uh, so could the listeners hear my response to that question? I'm not sure.
Yes, sir. We were able to hear you, and in fact, I would like to go ahead. Sir, if we see beyond revenue implications, how
Okay.
significantly do smuggling and counterfeiting affect consumer safety, fair competition, and confidence in formal markets? If you can shed some light on this aspect.
Okay. The smuggling of goods defeats the intended objects of the public policy of the government. And the public policy is framed keeping in mind the welfare and well-being of the public at large. It is important for providing the direction to the country's economy and raise the levels of the life of its people. Anything which defeats the purpose of the public policy is harmful for the country and the society. Bringing goods in the country by way of smuggling not only deprives the exchequer of its legitimate revenue, but may endanger the environment, and industrial sector. The unfair competition created by the smuggling goods vis-à-vis the legally imported goods on price front is also detrimental to formalization of the country's economy. It encourages informal economy and in turn government wants to provide to labor and vulnerable sections of the society. The counterfeit goods, in addition, are a detrimental to public health, public and erode the public faith on quality of product which they buy from the market. In long run, it discourages investment in research and development in the country, and therefore it is of utmost importance to curb the smuggling and counterfeiting by enforcement actions and creating awareness about their ill effects in the society.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, I agree with you. Uh, if we come to the taxation system, sir, and to what extent do taxation structures and price differentials influence illicit trade, particularly in sectors where higher tax incidents are often creates incentives for smuggling? So, if you'd like to share something on this aspect of the issue.
Uh, as I said earlier, in response to your earlier question, that the goods which are subject to high rate of taxes are most prone to smuggling. India is a vast country geographically with large land borders with neighboring countries, be it Myanmar, Nepal, or Bangladesh. In addition, India is the fourth largest economy in the world and aiming to become the third largest one. Also, it is a fact that we have a large informal retail sector, unlike other large economies where retail sector is more formal in nature. All these factors combined make curbing smuggling in India a daunting task. Let me give you an example of cigarettes. Cigarettes are subjected to high internal taxation by way of GST and central excise duty. This high tax provides huge incentive to illicit manufacture of cigarettes in the country as well as smuggling across borders. There are attempts to smuggle by way of concealment in declared cargo. Large open borders with neighboring countries also provide opportunity to smuggle by way of headloads by using the local population. And instances have been noticed of smuggling through Myanmar and Nepal border. Though it is difficult to estimate the extent of smuggled cigarettes sold in the country, but as per the data from Euromonitor International, the illicit cigarettes, which include clandestinely manufactured cigarettes also in the country, account for almost 26% of India's cigarette market, making India the fourth largest illicit cigarette market globally in terms of volume. An industry body, Tobacco Institute of India, has given an estimate that illicit cigarettes now amount to nearly one third of legal cigarettes volumes. So you can see that the extent of the problem in the country because of high tax rates. Some commodities have to be taxed at very high rate like cigarettes because we want to control consumption of tobacco for health reasons. But that leads to uh, illicit trade in cigarettes.
Absolutely. Sir, GST has been one of the major taxation reforms in India. How has the GST framework contributed to improving transparency and compliance? And do you see further scope for it to help curb illicit trade?
It's a very, very pertinent question. And I would like to point out that one of the major things which has happened with introduction of GST in the country is the integration of the fragmented markets within India. Earlier, wise in terms of VAT and there was hardly any sharing of data between states and center and states. In fact, the extent of digitalization or tightly varying from state to state will give entire now supply transactions happening anywhere in the country are reported on a single system, that is GST network. The cross-border transactions captured in customs systems are also seamlessly shared with the GSTN. Therefore, you see that transactions happening within the country or cross-border transactions are all shared. And this whole data to tax administrations for analytics. And administrations are using the latest tools of artificial intelligence and machine learning for detection of non-compliance by the taxpayers and possible areas of revenue leakage. I would also like to point out that it has not only led to detection of leakage of GST, but also flagged the instances of bogus accounting entries in books of accounts of businesses. This has also resulted in better tax compliance of income tax. I would also like to flag that GST return filings were kept simple at the time of introduction of GST. And now by using the huge compute power of GSTN, where all transactions are reported, return filings by taxpayers, GST taxpayers, is being made more robust and transparent. And I will give the recent examples, which are the facility of filing GST Year 1A and optional invoice management system. And once these improvements are fully implemented, scope of leakages will come to a large extent. So GST is really a game changer, not only in terms of integrating the market, but creating a huge data repository which is used by tax administrations to curb the leakage, not within the country, but what is moving in the country is the internalized.
Listeners, as Sir said, GST has been a game changer. We will continue this discussion, very informative talk and conversation with our eminent guest today, Mr. Sanjay Kumar Agarwal, former chairman, Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. Listeners, if you have any questions, we'll be having a very short window for you towards the end of our program where we can take up 2 to 3 questions. So keep your questions ready to be asked to our eminent guest today, and we'll try to get his comments and answers on those questions. So going ahead in today's show, uh, sir, there has been increasingly illicit trade is being linked with the organized criminal networks. How serious is this convergence, and what challenges does it create for enforcement agencies?
The illicit trade is not one-to-one activity. It is not that illicit trade is just moving goods from one place to other by circumventing detection. It involves whole gamut of operations, right from creating fake identities, deception, concealment of goods, using illegal channels for money transfers, layering of transactions, illicit supply chains, and dealing with mafias and money laundering. And in this entire gamut, there are inextricable linkages with the organized criminal networks. And these criminal networks use the proceeds of crime for all sorts of criminal activities, including subversion. And I can think of example of D Company. Those who have seen it in 90s, 80s, 90s are very well aware of the smuggling activity and how the money generated out of it used for creating terror in the country. And further expansion of e-commerce, especially after pandemic, have added additional layers of complexities on sale and distribution of counterfeit goods because detection is difficult if goods are sold through e-commerce. And new payment methods like cryptocurrencies and other digital modes are often used in illicit trades to avoid detection and transfer of large sums of money. And therefore, Dismantling of illicit trade activities require a collaborative approach by the law enforcement agencies. Inputs of one agency are leads to other agency in their domain, and only a collaborative approach can eradicate the scourge, and without it, it can at best inflict a wound, but not any effective deterrence. Yeah.
Absolutely, sir. As you have said, collaborative approach is what we need today. And when we talk about collaborative approach and detection mechanisms, technology comes in. So my next question to you is, to what extent can technology, data analytics, and digital traceability strengthen prevention and detection mechanisms against counterfeit and smuggled goods?
As I mentioned earlier, also that with more and more digitalization of processes and formalization of economy, now the data available for analytics for systematic patterns recognition is humongous. The tax administrations are using this data for detection of cases of non-compliance or tax evasion. Further, end-to-end data availability in supply chains are making it easier to find out the origin of goods. And this leads us to the traceability of goods for detection of counterfeiting. I would like to bring to the notice of the listeners that India is signatory for implementation of WHO protocol of track and trace of tobacco products to eliminate illicit trade. And already legal provisions have been created in GST law for its implementation, and with passage of the finance bill, now these legal provisions are there in GST law, and the work on technology front for its implementation is also in progress. So very soon we will have complete track and trace mechanism in case of tobacco products, which I pointed out in response to a previous question, that the illicit trade, as per the estimates of Euromonitor, is to the extent of 26% of the total market of cigarettes, and Tobacco Institute of India gives even a higher figure. So with track and trace in place, it will be easier to detect the counterfeit cigarettes which are entering into the market.
So as sir has said, systems are going to be more robust in future to detect smuggling and counterfeiting. Sir, every system needs and every processes needs constant improvement and reforms. So looking ahead, what reforms do you consider most important for strengthening India's response to smuggling and counterfeiting?
I believe that already we have sufficient legal framework to deal with smuggling and counterfeiting. But the need of the hour is to further strengthen our capacity to generate actionable inputs by refining our ability to use the data available from different sources. Some data is reaches to us from the regular filings. Some is received from open sources. So we'll have to increase the sources of data which are available to us, and by using all this data, we should be in better position to generate more actionable inputs to curb smuggling or counterfeiting. Already India has a framework where the brand owners, they can record on a custom system their brand, and in case of any suspect consignment coming in the country where they believe that counterfeit goods are entering in the country of their brand, they can report the matter to customs, and customs take uh, due action on that as per the set procedure. So framework is there. There is a need to use more of it to put an effective curb on counterfeit goods entering in the country. And then Better exchange of information by collaborative approach of the enforcement agencies is of utmost importance to make effective dent on such activities.
So collaborative efforts is what is required to make much more impactful, uh, to have much more impact on addressing this challenge of smuggling and counterfeiting in the era of trade facilitation. Listeners, we have one more question to go, and after that, we'll be taking up questions from you. So if you have anything to ask our eminent guest today, so keep it ready, and we'll be giving you space and this platform to raise your question. Sir, my next question is, how do you view the role of initiatives such as those led by FICCI Cascade in strengthening awareness, stakeholder engagement, and policy attention on illicit trade?
I have observed that FICCI Cascade is working closely with the industry and government to create awareness on how counterfeiting and smuggling has become a serious menace to public health and safety, and why all concerned must address these important issues. FICCI Cascade has been successful in steering an active debate on the menace of smuggling and counterfeiting nationally through various awareness programs and initiatives, engaging industry, policymakers, law enforcement officials, voluntary organizations, and consumers at large. FICCI Cascade has over the years organized various awareness programs and initiatives across the nation to fight the hazards of counterfeiting and smuggling. FICCI Cascade, I've noticed, is also engages with various ministries at the national and state level. They work closely with the Ministry of Consumer Affairs in their vision to protect the rights and interests of consumers, to spread awareness about consumer rights, duties and responsibilities, and to promote consumer welfare by strengthening consumer movement in the country. And the objective is to bring together and encourage deliberations between the stakeholders on the alarming magnitude of unfair trade practices such as counterfeiting and smuggling to spread awareness about its adverse socio-economic impact. And these initiatives of FICCI Cascades are playing an important role in creating awareness about the ills of these illicit activities and how these are causing immense damage to the country's economy. And as I mentioned in your earlier question, that a collaborative approach is required between the law enforcement agencies. It is not collaborative approach between the law enforcement agencies. It is other stakeholders have to be included, which is again being done by FICCI Cascade in their awareness program. So if everyone collaborate with law enforcement agencies, I think we will be in much better position to curb such activities and free the country from, to a large extent, from smuggling and counterfeiting.
Absolutely, I agree, sir. It is not just the collaborative efforts of the law enforcement agencies, but also we, the common people, the civil society organizations, all the stakeholders have to come together with law enforcement agencies to work on this humongous challenge. Sir, we have some of our listeners who would like to discuss and ask a few questions to you. We have our first listener, Nandini. She would like to ask a question to you. Nandini, please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Good evening. I would like to know, as trade becomes easier and faster, does it also make smuggling easier? How do we deal with that?
Nandini ji, trade is because the need of the hour is that the trade, legitimate trade, should move fast so that the cost and time involved in movement of trade is minimized, and that is our aim. But it doesn't mean that it will give rise to more smuggling. Position that customs already has an automated system where we use the data which is available either from the filings or from open source, that is analyzed, and we have put a very robust risk management system which flags the consignments which we suspect may not be as per the filings, and those consignments are subjected to detailed scrutiny and examination. That is the way customs strikes a balance between trade facilitation and enforcement. So we don't hinder the fast movement of cargo, but at the same time, we ensure that non-compliant cargo is subjected to scrutiny and examination.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. We have another listener, Srishti, who would like to ask a question. Srishti, please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Good evening. So I would like to ask that how can we make sure faster trade doesn't come at the cost of safety and authenticity?
Shrishti ji, your question is again similar to what Nandini ji has asked, and we already have put in place a system which intercepts the cargo on the basis of risk analysis. And I can give you a rough the extent to the of the extent to which the trade facilitation is provided by a custom system. It is to the tune of something like 85% of the cargo moves without any kind of intervention by customs. But 15% cargo is identified as because red flags are raised, and therefore such cargo is subject to detailed scrutiny and examination. This is not what kind of cargo is entering in the country, and the parameters are also in place to identify the detailed scrutiny and examination.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. One last question we'll take. We have another listener, Ashutosh, who would like to ask a question. Ashutosh, be brief and ask your question, sir.
Yeah, hi sir, and thank you for this informative session. So I have a question that sir, what quick actions can governments and businesses take to curb smuggling and counterfeit goods in general?
Uh, Regarding and already the cargo which is coming in the country by through the ports and airports, those are subject to a thorough risk analysis for identification of the where goods may be concealed or where there may be an attempt to misinvoice the cargo by way of either giving a wrong declaration about the description to escape higher duties or to escape the restrictions, or the cargo which is coming through the porous land borders. So here the agencies are collaborating with each other, like for outright smuggling which is happening through land borders. They are border agencies, so there is a collaborative approach between customs and border agencies like BSF and other border agencies man the land borders, say with Nepal or Bangladesh or Myanmar. So with this collaborative approach, so whatever is coming in the country is in, we make our best efforts to intercept and make seizures, and this is leading to uh, curbing the smuggling to a large extent, and huge seizures have been made by customs of smuggling which are happening through land borders. I can give you example of the commodities like areca nut or cigarettes or gold which is coming through these borders. The customs have made huge seizures of such commodities in past and continue to do it by collaborative approach, by developing human intelligence, and by doing the robust risk analysis.
Thank you, sir. Listeners, we are really running out of time, and but sir, one more listener is in the queue, so I would request if you can take up this question also. Please go ahead and be brief.
Hi, sir. So my question is, why do counterfeit products still enter the market, even with the strict trade rules in place?
Uh, I would say counterfeit products, basically counterfeit products means violation of the trademarks. So it's a private right. So counterfeit goods may be manufactured within the country and pushed in the market, or counterfeit goods may be smuggled from other countries and manufactured in another country and smuggled into India, or may be concealed in the declared cargo and enter in the country. Because of the huge volumes which enter in the country, it is not able to examine every consignment. So this can we identify consignments, but maybe chance that goods may enter in the country by way of concealment or was actually in the country and entered into pushed in the market. Mention when counterfeit enter in the market, they disturb the market equilibrium, and that raises the red flag. Those red flags are noticed by the brand owners, and they could be the best source of information to law enforcement agencies, and they take it up with the law enforcement agencies, whether it is for across borders, it is customs, but within the country, it is like police. So they file the complaints, and it depends on how active brand owners also in ensuring that the counterfeit goods of their brand, a due action is taken by law enforcement agency for their confiscation and destruction.
So thank you so much. And this, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our program today. And we had such an engaging session today. Sir, thank you so much for taking out time and informing and really giving us those insights about smuggling and counterfeiting today. We are really thankful to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Listeners, so we are closing our program today. This is your host, Ram Narendra Yadav, signing off. And do tune us in our next series of X-Space that FICCI Cascade will be organizing soon. Tune us and keep updating yourself through our X-Space. And we'll be in conversation again very soon on another important topic related to smuggling and counterfeiting. Have a nice day ahead. Thank you and goodbye.